Grace and peace be multiplied unto you. Today we are still on system. We are still talking about ecosystem. So we are continuing our topic on ecosystem. Last week we learned what an ecosystem is. So this week we're talking about habitat. So a habitat is a natural home of an animal, plant or other organisms. A habitat is a natural home of an animal, plant or other organisms. That is, any type of natural environment in which a particular type of an organism lives is called its habitat. That is, any type of natural environment in which a particular type of an organism lives is called its habitat. So anything natural, anything natural where a particular type of organism lives is called what? Habitat. In any given habitat, an organism is able to find food, protection, shelter, and reproduce its young ones. So the things which must be seen in an habitat is, the things which must be seen in an habitat is: 1, food, protection, shelter, and reproduction. So a good place or a good habitat must consist of food, protection, shelter, and reproduction must take place there. Please note that a habitat may not necessarily be a geographical area. It could be under a big stone, which is a rock, a rotten log, the inside of a tree stem, or top of a tree, etc. So habitat is not only on land. It's not only on land. It can be under a big stone, it can be a rotten log, the inside of a tree stem, or on top of a tree, etc. This means that any place where an organism can live successfully by getting its food, shelter, and production, even producing its young ones, constitutes a habitat. So where an organism lives successfully with no harm, when the organism gets its food, when it gets shelter, when it gets protection, and even produces young ones, that place is termed as what? Habitat. The important thing is that this specific place it chooses to stay must be conductive. That is, it should be able to provide the organisms all what its organisms requires to survive. So an important part is that the place where the organism chooses must produce the things you mentioned above, or things that will help the organism to survive. The things which must be there for the organism to survive is food, shelter, protection. With all this, they can produce what? More. So this is an example of a habitat. We have desert, we have forest, we have solar, we have a lot. Now, types of habitat. There are 3 main types of habitat. They have the terrestrial, that's the land; aquatic, that's water; and arboreal, that's the air. So there are 3 main types of habitats. They are the terrestrial, that's the land; aquatic, that's the water; and arboreal, that's what? The air. So we take it one after the other and explain it. So terrestrial, these are land habitats, and so most of the organisms, that's plants and animals, live on the land. They include grassland, deserts, farmlands, park, etc. So the terrestrial is all about land. It talks about land. Land. We human beings live on the land, okay? And so most of the organisms, plants and animals normally live on the land, okay? So the terrestrial, that's the grassland, the desert, the farmlands, the park, etc. And we come to aquatic. These are water habitats. So it deals with water and all organisms that live in water or depends on water for their survivals. We all know fishes depends on water for their what? Survival. Aquatic habitats include the lakes, marines, sea and oceans, rivers, swamps, marshes, etc. Okay, so the aquatic is the lakes, our lagoon, our marines, our sea, our ocean, our rivers, our swamps. Okay, all these are aquatic. Where when we talk about aquatic, we are talking about fishes, okay, which live in the water for their survival. That's where they get their shelter, they get their protection, and they even produce more. Okay, they get their food. Okay, now Eboro, it deals with organisms that live in the air or on trees. They include butterflies, ants, grasshoppers, termites, spiders, etc. Okay, so it deals with organisms that live in the air or on trees. Okay, so that's the three main kinds of what habitats. Now we go to importance of the ecosystem. Organisms derive numerous benefits in their ecosystems. This includes access to food, as we mentioned above, to get a complete ecosystem. Okay, a complete place you can live. One, you have to get access to food. That means there must be food there for your survival. Two, security and protection. You must be safe there. You must not be harmed. There must not be any danger that will come towards you. Okay, you must be secured and protected. Three, you must have shelter. That's the importance of the ecosystem. Shelter, a place you take rest at, a place you can say this where what when there's any thing, when this where I go and sit or sleep. Okay, now safe place for reproduction. Must be a safe place for you to what? Reproduce, to give birth. Okay. Interdependency of organisms in an ecosystem. Organisms in an ecosystem depend either directly or indirectly on one another. So organisms and ecosystem depend either directly or indirectly on one another, which means every organism is important in the ecosystem. So if in the ecosystem organisms depend directly or indirectly on one another, it means every organism in the ecosystem is what? Important. For instance, a small change in temperature or moisture in the soil can attract living organisms like earthworms and other microscopic organisms. Okay, so a small change in temperature, a small change in the weather, okay, or moisture in the soil, okay, when there's a little small, you see that temperature changes, it affects what? Some organisms. And when the soil too, maybe there is no dry season, everyone that's a dry season, so it affects some organisms. The number of these organisms may reduce or increase drastically depending on the temperature or moisture level of the soil. Okay, as I was saying, if the temperature changes, okay, it affects somewhat organisms. And if the temperature or the moisture the moisture level in the soil is okay, so we get more, you see that's when you see more earthworms and microscopic organisms. But when there's dry season, you won't see all those animals, the earthworms and the microscopic organisms. And when the weather changes a little bit, let's take for instance mosquitoes. When the weather is very hot, you see them a lot. But when the weather becomes very cold, you won't see them outside. Hope you are getting me. Plants growing in the soil will also be affected. So when the level moisture, okay, when there's less water in the soil, okay, or we are in a dry season, there's less water in the soil, it affects plants. Okay, plant does not grow well. This means animals and human beings source of food may either increase or decrease. So when the soil is very moist, okay, when there is a lot of water in the soil, so that we get a lot of food in town, okay, our source of food increases, and animals also would get food to eat for them to also increase number. But when the level or the moisture level of the soil is below or is down, okay, it decreases the sources of our food. It also decreases the animals because some will go hungry and die. Okay, and we human beings too, the food we were buying at cheaper price will now be costly. So that is why it is important to protect the ecosystem. So you have to always protect our ecosystem. The same way, if animals like goats, sheep, etc. get enough food, that's grass, they grow healthy and reproduce well. As I was saying, okay, let's take sheep and goats. If they get enough feed, that's the grass, okay, they grow healthy and produce well, so their numbers will increase. However, if there's draft, okay, and they don't get enough food, they are likely to die. I've already explained that part. Human beings and other organisms that eat them will be affected. So if all these goats are not getting enough grass, okay, to feed on, okay, they will grow lean and die. They can't reproduce well, okay. So it will affect human beings and other organisms. Okay, it will affect human beings and other organisms. This means that when one organism has a problem, it goes to affect other organisms in the ecosystem. So if there's a problem with one organism, it affects another organism in the ecosystem. So when conditions in the ecosystem are good, some organisms will benefit whilst the numbers of others will reduce. As I was saying, if the condition in the ecosystem is good, the what's the name? The goats are getting good grass to feed on. You see that everything will increase, but it will affect animals. It will affect organisms too. We should therefore keep the ecosystem safe to avoid causing imbalance. When an ecosystem is destroyed, plants, animals, and human beings all suffer. So when the ecosystem is destroyed, plants suffer, animals suffer, and we human beings also suffer. So ways of destroying the ecosystem: deforestation, that's destruction of forest. Deforestation, cutting off trees without planting them back. Okay, you see that you'll be cutting down the big trees in the forest. Okay, it will destroy the forest. So after cutting, they don't plant it back for it to germinate. It destroys the ecosystem. Felling of trees for plywood, for wood, etc. So after cutting it down, they'll use it for plywood and wood. Okay. Illegal mine, that's the galamsey. The galamsey destroys our water body, so it gets to a system. It gets some time. You know that there's shortage of water in the water system. Sand winning, where we go for sand for our building, they will take the sand to the extent that it will cause soil erosion. It also destroys the ecosystem. So we go to ways of preserving the ecosystem. There is therefore the need to protect the ecosystem in their communities. The following are some of the ways of preserving our ecosystem. Afforestation, that is planting of trees. So as we are growing, you must always have let's say a little garden at the back of our house. Okay, one house, one garden. one garden, one house, one garden. Okay, with this you'll be having a lot of plants. If you are not going to grow fruits or vegetables, you can grow flowers. Okay, also avoiding illegal mining, that's the galamsey. You have to stop the galamsey. Avoiding illegal felling of trees, that is using the trees for plywood, woods for what's the name, for building. Harvesting of rainwater, you must harvest rainwater. When someone has pipe in his or her house, when it's raining, the person doesn't even bother to even put something in the rain to even what, take some. He thinks because he or she is having pipe, the pipe will always what, flow. But if you take some of the rainwater and keep it at a safer place, you can use that one, and later when the other one gets finished, then you move back to your what, your pipe water. Changing our feeding habits. Another one is changing our feeding habits. How we feed. Someone can buy full goat and chew all within a week. That's very bad. Okay, you have to wait. After buying the full goat, you have to apportion it. Okay, let me take it 1 month. Within 1 month, I'll finish this goat meat. By that 1 month, another goat has also what, grown. But when we eat the rest, we sometimes don't even keep it whole and pour them away. Okay, all this what, when we practice how we eat. Okay, when we practice good eating habits. Okay, it doesn't give problems to the ecosystem. Makes the ecosystem very what, safe. Now let's do a quick summary. So we now know an ecosystem is a community of all living things and non-living things in a given geographical area. It could be big or small. Also, an ecosystem is made up of two components. That's the biotic factors and abiotic what, factors. Now we come to habitat. It's a natural home of an animal, plant, or other what, organisms. In a given habitat, organisms are able to find food, shelter, protection, reproduce, etc., among others. There are three types of habitats. They are the terrestrial, that's the land; aquatic, that's the water; and arboreal, that's the what, the air. The assignment will be sent to you. Try as much as possible to do it and submit it on time. Stay home, stay safe. God bless you.